a brilliant young inventor, while experimenting, suddenly finds himself ripped out of his own timeline and hurled into the distant past. To his shock, he awakens as the crown prince of the Joseon dynasty in Korean history. From that moment on, he begins to reshape the kingdom using knowledge from the future. While neighboring nations still rely on oil lamps, his empire shines brightly under electric lights. When foreign armies still travel by horseback, his people ride trains, and when enemy soldiers march into battle clad in fabric armor, his troops are already equipped with iron plating and devastating six-barrel firearms, cutting down opponents with every shot. This is the story of a 9-year-old crown prince who transforms his dynasty into the most powerful empire in history. Our tale begins with Kim Jin-ho, a prodigy whose talent for invention set him apart from an early age. In middle school, he successfully built a working model of a steam engine. By high school, he was forging iron armor with the skill of a master craftsman. In college, he went even further, constructing a human-powered aircraft that required no fuel. He even created a bizarre toy gun that caused more pain than a real weapon, an invention that nearly got him arrested by the Royal Army on multiple occasions. But fate had other plans. During an earthquake, Jin-ho dropped a stock of volatile materials, triggering an explosion that transported him centuries into the past. When he opened his eyes, he found himself reborn as a newborn child. Soon he discovered that his new family was anything but ordinary. At first, he believed them to be mere nobles. But he quickly learned the truth. His father was the crown prince, destined to be the fourth ruler of the Own dynasty. Jin-ho had been granted a new life, born directly into power and privilege. Time passed swiftly, and in what felt like an instant, Jin-ho had grown to 4 years of age. Around this time, the reigning emperor decided to abdicate the throne, naming Jin-ho's father the new king. As the son of the newly crowned monarch, Jin-ho inherited the title of crown prince. Like other royal heirs, he was expected to begin his education early. But being mentally over 30 years old, Jin-ho grew frustrated at having to sit through lessons designed for children. Determined to turn the situation to his advantage, he devised a clever plan. In history, King Saiyang the Great was known as a wise ruler who valued innovation and nurtured talent. Using this to his benefit, Jin-ho resolved to gather skilled craftsmen, teaching them the future's knowledge in order to gain his father's trust and establish himself as indispensable. His goal was simple: to live a life of luxury while others did the work, all the while maintaining the appearance of diligence to earn respect and manipulate those around him. The first step was to win over his tutors. These instructors would one day hold high offices in court, so gaining their loyalty early was crucial. The very next day, while heading toward his study, Jin-ho suddenly stopped. A foul stench hit his nose. Looking around curiously, he discovered the source, a massive pile of dung lying in the grass. Seriously? He thought. Did people in ancient times really relieve themselves wherever they pleased? At that moment, a group of palace maids walked past, bowing politely to greet the crown prince. Jin-ho was about to continue on his way when the smell assaulted him again. Glancing back, he saw the last maid in the group had stepped directly into the pile, smearing her dress with filth. Jin-ho's modern sensibilities were outraged. The idea of palace staff walking around in such a state was appalling. As someone from a world of hygiene and sanitation, he couldn't tolerate it. Determined to put an end to such careless behavior, he raised the matter with his teachers later that day. "On my way here," he began, "I saw a maid with feces on her dress. It's natural for people to relieve themselves, but having it spread onto clothing is unacceptable. This must change." One teacher argued that clothing served more than the simple purpose of covering the body, it was also a symbol of social status. Some inconvenience, he claimed, was to be expected. But with his modern perspective, Jin-ho cut him down immediately with sharp reasoning. "Even if a person wears rags," he declared, "their virtue will still shine through. Judging someone's worth by their clothing is outdated. Don't you see that? The teachers fell silent, unable to counter his logic. Realizing they could not argue further, they hurriedly shifted the topic. This isn't something that can be resolved overnight, Your Highness. Do you have any other questions? Jin-ho cursed them under his breath, irritated by their evasiveness. He pressed on. Recently, I read a report about Tsushima Island being invaded. It said that everyone from nobles to commoners was forced to enlist because our defense forces were so inadequate. Why haven't we established a proper navy? His questions came one after another, relentless and cutting. And why didn't we evacuate the civilians from the island? If you're concerned about Japanese pirates occupying the land, wouldn't it be wiser to relocate the people to northern Asen? The more he spoke, the more nervous the teachers became. Sweat gathered on their brows as they struggled to respond, unprepared for a crown prince so well informed about national affairs. Yet no matter how hard Jin-ho pressed, the seasoned scholars only insisted these matters were beyond their control. Their stubbornness infuriated him further, though he could do nothing about it. After the meeting, the old scholars gathered privately to discuss what had just happened. They were stunned by the crown prince's intellect. At only 5 years old in age, when most children were still in kindergarten, he was already dismantling the arguments of his tutors. They whispered among themselves that if the crown prince was this sharp already, they ought to teach him more advanced knowledge. One day, when he took the throne, he would surely become a wise and brilliant emperor. Meanwhile, Jin-ho remained in the palace, unaware that he had just made his life more difficult. He already despised studying, and now his relentless display of intelligence had ensured he would be forced to study even more. He seethed at the scholar's arrogance. History recorded that the original owner of this body had died young from overwork. Jin-ho had originally intended to begin making moves once he turned 15, but given the situation, he realized he would have to act much sooner. 3 years slipped by in the blink of an eye. Jin-ho was now 7 years old and officially crowned crown prince before the entire court. The ancient coronation rituals were long and exhausting, leaving him drained. But after enduring years of harsh study, he had at last secured his rightful position. Now, as crown prince, he was permitted to participate in imperial discussions with his father and the ministers. He even had opportunities to propose small plans for strengthening the nation's wealth and power. But the greatest obstacle remained the same. The royal treasury was nearly empty. And though crowned crown prince, he was still a mere 7-year-old child. No one took his words seriously. Even so, Jin-ho refused to sit idle. He would begin with small steps. One day, while writing, he smeared ink across the page. "Annoying," he muttered. No matter how often he used a brush, he could never get used to it. This era was full of inconveniences. Then an idea struck him. That's it. If I can't push through major reforms yet, I should begin with the small inconveniences. This would be the true start. Outside, blacksmiths toiled with glowing iron, hammering it into shape. This was the military supply division, the imperial facility responsible for forging weapons. As Jin-ho passed through, the sight filled him with energy. The sharp scent of hot metal stirred something in him. I've missed the smell of steel, he thought. I'll visit this place often, get to know the people here. Just then, a supervising official approached and bowed deeply to greet the crown prince. Jin-ho smiled warmly and replied, "It's a pleasure to meet you. Thanks to your dedication, the Zun fortresses are stronger than ever." The man standing before him, Lee Chong-ho, the overseer of the military supply division, was humbled by the prince's praise. Bowing his head, he said respectfully, "It is my honor, Your Highness." Clearing his throat, Jin-ho shifted the conversation. "I've come here with a particular request. Who among your men is the most skilled craftsman when it comes to working with golden steel?" Lee Chong-ho hesitated for a moment, clearly taken aback. "Golden steel, Your Highness," he murmured, thinking carefully before adding, "There is someone who may be able to assist." At Jin-ho's signal, Lee Chong-ho summoned a skilled blacksmith. The moment the man entered and caught sight of the crown prince, he dropped to his knees and bowed deeply. "This humble servant greets your highness." Hyung chuckled lightly. "Humble? No, don't say that. How could someone entrusted with fortifying the defenses of Osen ever be considered humble?" Flustered yet respectful, the blacksmith replied, "Your grace is truly boundless." With a serious expression, Hyung unrolled a scroll and beckoned him closer. "There's something I'd like you to see." He spread out the blueprint across the table. "Tell me, can you craft this?" The blacksmith studied the sketch with a puzzled look. "What exactly is this?" Placing a hand on the drawing, Hyung explained, "It's a replacement for the traditional brush." The blacksmith's eyes widened in astonishment. "This design, it looks like a tool that can hold ink within itself, releasing it as one writes. But the real challenge seems to be controlling how much ink flows out with each stroke." Delighted, Hyung smiled. The craftsman had grasped the concept perfectly. "Exactly. And there's more. At the tip of the nib, there must be a rounded end so the paper doesn't absorb too much ink. Also, the slit that releases the ink must be as narrow as possible." The blacksmith considered carefully before answering. "If I devote myself fully, I believe I can make the slit about 5 mo wide." Hyung did the conversion in his head. 5 mo, 1 kai is about 3 centimeters, so 1/10 of that, 0.15 millimeters. "And you can do that by hand?" He nodded. "That's promising. But this isn't just for one pen. We'll need many of them, produced quickly, not over the course of a month. Since the nibs will come into contact with water, they must be crafted from gold or silver rather than iron to prevent rust. We'll hammer them from thin sheets, and if the molds are made correctly, we should manage 20 pens a day." The blacksmith pointed at the drawing. "The main issue will be perfecting the slit." Hyung pressed on. "When writing, the line must be as thin as a strand of hair. Around the thickness of a mechanical pencil lead about 0.5 millimeters should be just right." After some quick calculations, the blacksmith nodded. "Then I'll make the slit 1 gi wide." "How long will it take?" Hyung asked seriously. 2 days should be enough," the blacksmith replied with confidence. "I'll give you 3, Hyung countered firmly. "Bring me your finest finished work." The craftsman bowed low. "I obey, your highness." 3 days later, right on schedule, the blacksmith returned. He presented the results with pride. "I've crafted 5 nibs, each with a different thickness. Please test them and choose the one that suits you best." Hyung attached one of the nibs to the pen body and dipped it into ink. With a smooth stroke across the paper, a fine, elegant line appeared far beyond his expectations. A bright smile spread across his face. "Excellent. I truly like it. You've done an outstanding job." The blacksmith lowered his head, his voice filled with humility. "It was only possible thanks to your guidance, your highness." After testing all the nibs, Hyang gave his command. "Produce 100 more with this exact line thickness, and keep 10 of them in flawless condition." The blacksmith bowed deeply and responded without hesitation. "Of course, your highness." Hyang considered for a moment before adding, "Also, can you engrave plum blossoms on the nib of this golden pen?" The blacksmith, showing no sign of doubt, answered promptly, "Certainly, your highness." Han, unable to contain his excitement, asked eagerly, "How long will that take?" The blacksmith confidently replied, 10 days will be enough, your highness." Hyang, ever cautious and meticulous, said, "I'll grant you 2 additional days, but there must not be a single defect. I will be presenting this to my father." The blacksmith Gong bowed again, placing his hand over his chest as he swore, "I give you my word, your highness, there will be no defects." Before departing, Hyang gave one final instruction. "One more thing, this must remain a secret until I reveal it to my father." Gong lowered his head respectfully. "As you command, your highness." With the discussion concluded, Hyang departed swiftly. Watching him from behind, Lee Chong-ho remarked quietly, "His Highness shows remarkable maturity for someone so young." Gong nodded in agreement. "Yes, I've heard he only just turned 8 this year, yet he speaks and behaves like a man of 30. Lee Chong-ho then turned to him with a smile. "Leaving that aside, you must realize what this means, don't you? To be regarded as the greatest craftsman in Osen." Indeed, Gong had recently received a certificate of recognition personally awarded by Crown Prince Hyun himself. He treasured the honor dearly. "I'll need to find a carpenter to craft the finest frame for this," he thought aloud. "It deserves to be preserved as a family heirloom." The nibs Hyang had commissioned were soon completed, each one adorned with intricate engravings of plum blossoms. When fitted to the golden pens, they glided across paper with unparalleled smoothness, producing lines finer and more precise than anyone had ever seen. When Emperor Young Nguyen tested the pen himself, his astonishment was evident. "This is extraordinary, truly a perfect tool. 10 out of 10. In the 3rd year of Sai Young's reign, the Crown Prince formally presented the golden pen to the court. The Emperor, after trying it once more, could not stop praising it. "The wrist and arm feel so comfortable when writing with this pen. Even when writing swiftly, the lines remain elegant, and its beauty magnificent." Turning to his son, he added with genuine pride, "You have created something truly admirable." Hyang bowed humbly. "You are too kind, father." The emperor's voice grew solemn. Historians record this moment. The crown prince's accomplishment must be preserved. "Yes, your majesty," the court historians replied, bowing low. The emperor gazed at the pen for a long moment before noticing something remarkable. "Wait, is this a plum blossom engraved on the nib?" "Yes, father," Hyang answered quickly. "It is the emblem of our royal family." The more Hyang explained, the greater the emperor's pride became. "Excellent. But tell me, how did you conceive such an invention?" The king, as expected, wished to know the inspiration behind it. Hyang paused briefly, thinking to himself, "Here it comes." Then, with careful words, he explained. "One day, I observed father dipping his brush into the ink. I noticed something unusual. Water, by nature, flows downward, but the ink was absorbed upward into the bristles. I found it fascinating, and that curiosity inspired me to create this pen." The emperor leaned back, deeply impressed. "Remarkable. Countless men have used brushes, yet none have observed what you did. This is the essence of true learning, observation turned into wisdom." Hyang responded boldly. "Thank you for your praise, father, but I also have a request." "Speak," the emperor commanded. Hyang gestured to a eunuch who entered carrying a carefully prepared box. "Bring them here," the crown prince instructed. The eunuch obeyed, presenting the box. Hyang then turned respectfully to his father. "Please, father, grant these golden pens to the historians and the ministers of the court." The emperor looked surprised. "All of these pens?" "Yes," Hyang explained. "The ministers and officials who must write swiftly will benefit greatly, and the historians, who labor tirelessly to record every detail of our realm, deserve some relief from their burdens." I believed they might benefit from something that could ease their work, even if only slightly. At that moment, everyone's eyes widened in surprise. Not once had anyone ever shown such consideration for the efforts of the court historians. The emperor, intrigued, asked for the opinions of his ministers. "I find the crown prince's idea to be excellent. What are your thoughts?" The ministers quickly voiced their agreement. "We, too, believe His Highness is right. For someone so young to already think of the well-being of his officials, it is truly admirable," they said with respect. Pleased by their response, the king gave his approval. "Distribute the golden pens to the historians and court officials," he commanded. The servants bowed and hurried to obey. Throughout the session, the emperor's face glowed with joy. and his ministers shared in his delight. "His Highness the Crown Prince is truly thoughtful," they remarked, while Hyung himself smiled in satisfaction. Not long after, the golden pen Hyung had designed sparked a new trend in Joseon. In the third year of Sai Young's reign, the Crown Prince presented the golden pen to the Emperor. Curious, the Emperor tested it and was impressed by its smooth writing. "Why did you create this pen?" he asked. Hyung explained, "While watching the ink rise through the brush bristles, I was inspired with the idea." The Emperor praised his son's intelligence and suggested that officials who often wrote lengthy documents should adopt the pen. Once introduced to the court, the golden nib pen caused a stir. Ministers and officials alike were astonished. "Have you tried the Crown Prince's golden nib pen?" one asked. "Yes, I have. It's extraordinary," another replied. The invention quickly spread in popularity, largely because it made drafting official records far more efficient. To further aid the generals, Hyung later created a portable writing board. "When urgent orders must be issued, this board will allow you to write comfortably anywhere," he explained. Those who tried it were astonished. "This is remarkable," they exclaimed. The Emperor, deeply pleased, ordered both the pens and writing boards to be produced in large numbers and distributed to his generals. The golden nib pen soon reshaped life in the kingdom. In the capital, merchants bustled with trade. "How much for these?" a customer asked. "2 coins and 3, but for you, only 2 coins and 2, replied the shopkeeper. "That's rather costly. Let me try some ink and a board first." The shopkeeper eagerly handed them over. The customer wrote, "Today I am buying 2 sacks of white rice." His eyes lit up in wonder. "So this is the golden nib pen everyone has been talking about." "Yes," the shopkeeper confirmed. "This is the very pen the Emperor himself has endorsed engraved with delicate plum blossoms." The man admired it. "It's beautiful, easy to carry, and very convenient when one needs to write quickly," he said with a smile, gathering his purchases. "Now I must bring home all this paper." He waved farewell, and the shopkeeper bowed. Even after the customer disappeared from sight, the shopkeeper murmured to himself, "I smell profit in the air." A few days later, during a court session, a minister rose to report troubling news. "Your Majesty, an unfortunate incident has occurred in the market." "An incident? Speak," the Emperor commanded. "There are rumors that counterfeit golden nib pens are being sold everywhere." The Emperor's expression darkened. "How dare they forge such a precious item, one that carries the royal seal? This is an outrage. The punishment must be severe." The ministers immediately agreed. "We urge your Majesty to impose strict measures upon them." The Emperor, however, recalled Hyang's role. "I believe we should first consult the Crown Prince, for he is the inventor of the golden nib pen." At once, the eunuch called out, "Summon His Highness the Crown Prince." Before long, Hyang entered and bowed. "Father, you called for me." The Emperor wasted no time. The ministers believe that those producing counterfeit pens must face severe punishment. I wish to hear your thoughts on the matter." Hyang lowered his gaze, deep in thought. His brow furrowed, and silence filled the hall. All eyes turned toward him, waiting patiently for the young prince's judgment, admiring the depth and seriousness in his expression. A few minutes later, Hyung finally spoke up. "Father, may I handle this matter?" Time passed quickly, and within a month, the Crown Prince made his move. Hyung slowly stepped into the Ministry of Revenue. At once, every official present dropped to their knees and bowed in respect. "Your Highness, we greet the Crown Prince," they declared in unison. With a calm tone, Hyung addressed them. "Rise. Do you know why I have summoned you here?" He held up a pen. The moment they saw it, several officials went pale, and none dared to lift their heads. "My guild would never commit such treachery," one blurted. "Nor mine," another quickly added. Hyung's eyes swept over them. I did not come here to accuse you, he said evenly. Still trembling, the officials remained kneeling until Hyung slammed the table sharply. His voice dropped, cold and commanding. Do not make me repeat myself. Stand, now. As the officials hurried to obey, Hyung seated himself at the head of the table. His words carried the weight of authority. I will be direct. The production of golden nib pens, as well as standard pens, will be granted to one of your guilds. However, the guild responsible for producing golden nib pens will surrender 20% of their profits to the court. In addition, the market price of these pens may not exceed 60% above production costs. One of the officials hesitated before speaking. Your Highness, forgive me, but there is an issue. A 60% margin sounds generous. Yet when we account for wages, both craftsmen and sellers, we are left with only 30% profit. If the court claims 20%, we will retain no more than 10%. At this, Hyung slammed his palm against the table, his expression darkening. Are you daring to deceive me? He thundered. The man froze in terror. I said 20% of the 30% profit, Hyung snapped, pointing directly at him. That leaves you with 6%, not 10. Guards, remove this money-blinded fool at once. Strip his guild of its bidding rights. Your Highness, please, mercy. The man stammered desperately as soldiers dragged him from the chamber. His cries faded into silence. The oppressive atmosphere tightened, leaving the remaining officials trembling in fear. Not one dared to speak. Hyung's voice cut through the heavy air. Both His Majesty and I believe that merchants and common folk are the lifeblood of Ocean. No one prospers alone, everyone depends on others. But if any of you dare lie as he did, know this, the court will regard merchants as nothing but worthless parasites. Do not test me. Every official lowered their heads deeply. We will remember, Your Highness, they answered in unison. With his stance made clear, the bidding for golden nib pens proceeded without further scheming. Later, Hyung summoned the eunuch privately. A faint smile curled across his lips. You have done well. I would never dare claim credit, Your Highness, the eunuch replied with a bow. But why go to such lengths? Hyung let out a quiet sigh. You know the truth? I am still too young. I have no other choice. The eunuch nodded in understanding. Then, with your permission, I shall take my leave. Go, Hyung replied simply. Inside, he felt immense satisfaction. Good. Very good. Everything is proceeding smoothly. Keep this course, and the future will be mine. But the calm did not last. One day, an official suddenly spoke out. Your Highness, I Grand Chamberlain Suum have something to report. His voice carried a stern finality. We can no longer continue with the Crown Prince's plan. Suum then turned and declared directly to the Emperor. Your Majesty, I, Grand Minister Suum, must make this known. We cannot allow the Crown Prince's scheme to proceed. For the first time since his reincarnation, Hyung faced true political opposition. He regarded the man with a resolute gaze. Until now, he had been showered with praise and approval. The treasury had flourished under his reforms, and the introduction of golden nib pens had brought unprecedented revenue. The kingdom's financial standing was stronger than ever, and King Sejong, along with the ministers, had begun to recognize the growing power of trade. Yet now, resistance had finally arrived. The emperor showered Hyung with praise. The crown prince has truly accomplished something remarkable, he declared. Yet, not everyone shared in this admiration. Those who resented the prince began to gather in secret. In a dimly lit chamber, several conspirators huddled together. How can the royal court turn into a marketplace? One of them muttered, stroking his beard in disapproval. If this continues, merchants will eventually fall to the lowest rank in society. The emperor and his ministers are granting them far too much favor. Another conspirator added in a grim tone, and the root of all this lies with the crown prince himself. We must act quickly and reveal this matter to His Majesty, or the kingdom will surely walk down the wrong path." The group nodded in agreement. No matter how clever the prince may be, he is still just a child. Allowing one so young to decide the fate of the nation is a grave mistake. But before their schemes could be carried out, tragedy struck. On the 10th of May, in the 4th year of Si Young's reign, the emperor's father, Grand King T. Jong, passed away at the age of 56. The conspirators sighed heavily, their plans forced into suspension. "It seems we must wait for the next opportunity," one of them conceded, and the others reluctantly agreed. Meanwhile, Hyang immersed himself in relentless study, day and night. One book after another filled his desk. Many texts from Europe had arrived through China, and the young prince devoured them eagerly. Standing tall with his hands on his hips, he thought to himself, "Perhaps these writings will help fuel my inspiration. But if I claim all of these ideas as my own, they may grow suspicious." His expression darkened. "I'll need to learn the art of deception as well." Everything unfolded as planned. During a formal presentation before the court, Hyang spoke with confidence and clarity. "That is why I propose the adoption of Indian numerals. Westerners call them Arabic numerals, and I believe their use will be far more convenient for our nation." The emperor turned to his ministers. "What say you of the crown prince's proposal?" Minister of Revenue, Kim Young, bowed respectfully. "After careful consideration, I find Indian numerals highly practical for recording numbers." Minister of Rights, Hyoddu, also nodded. "I share the same view, Your Majesty." The emperor did not hesitate. "With the agreement of these two key ministries, I hereby grant permission for the use of Indian numerals starting next month. Should the results prove effective, they will be adopted across the entire kingdom." The court responded in unison. "We obey, Your Majesty." As the next petition was read aloud, the emperor paused, rubbing his temples in weariness. "I believe the crown prince should hear this matter as well." Confused, Hyang stepped forward. "Yes, father?" The emperor explained. "The emperor of the Ming has expressed great satisfaction with the golden nib pens we sent. He now demands an additional 10,000 as tribute." Hyang knew well the fragile state of the royal treasury. His mind raced until an idea took form. "Father," he said boldly, "what if the court were to establish its own guild?" The ministers gasped. "A guild? Impossible," Minister of Rights, Hyan, protested loudly. The emperor raised his hand, silencing the chamber. "Let the crown prince continue." Encouraged, Hyang explained carefully, "Since the Ming emperor requests more pens, it is clear they are highly valued there. With its vast territory and countless scholars, the Ming has far more literate people than our own kingdom. If we work with merchants to produce these pens, the demand could greatly exceed the tribute required." The emperor leaned back, deep in thought, while Minister Kim Young's eyes gleamed with calculation. "By those numbers, the profit would be considerable," he remarked. The emperor and minister exchanged knowing smiles. Hyang pressed on. "Furthermore, we could require merchants to accompany our diplomatic envoys to the Ming dynasty. In return, they would only be responsible for covering their lodging expenses." But Minister Sum scowled in defiance. "No, we cannot follow the prince's plan." He spoke with conviction. "Yes, such a scheme would enrich the court, but unchecked wealth breeds indulgence. If the people grow too accustomed to luxury, tyranny will follow, and the royal family's power will no longer be secure." Another official stepped forward. "I, the Minister of Rights, stand with Minister Suam. How could we allow mere merchants to accompany a diplomatic mission to the Emperor of Maine? It would stain the honor of our nation." He turned toward the Crown Prince. "Your Highness, it seems you do not yet fully understand the intricacies of state affairs or the policies of our country. I believe it would be best for you to devote yourself to your studies and learn to view matters of state through the eyes of a true king." Hyang respectfully addressed his father. "Father, may I have permission to respond?" The emperor gave a nod. Permission granted. Hyang turned sharply to Grand Minister Suam. "You claim that if our nation grows wealthy, the people will become indulgent, fall in love with luxury, and that this will inevitably lead to tyranny. Is that correct?" "Indeed," Suam replied, drawing from history. "If you look at what has—" Before he could finish, Hyang cut in. "Then look closer at the past. It was the people who toiled with their sweat and blood to sustain such luxury. Are you accusing me of draining the lifeblood of the common folk?" Suam retorted, "Did I not already state that our goal is to bring wealth from outside?" Yet Sonam ignored the crown prince's words. "Even if this plan shows promise, there is no guarantee peace will endure. When things go wrong, it is always the people who will suffer." Hyang met his gaze directly. "Grand Minister, are you living only for today?" Suam's composure faltered. "What did you say?" Without hesitation, Hyang repeated, "How can you be so certain the golden nib pens will sell only once? The merchants will not stop at pens." Suam frowned. "Tell me, are any high-ranking officials using these so-called golden nib pens? At first, many might purchase them out of curiosity, but eventually they will realize such a pen cannot match the elegance of the traditional brush. In the end, it will be nothing but a trinket." The Minister of Revenue, Kim Young, stepped in. "Grand Minister, you are mistaken. Do you know how many golden nib pens have sold in the past month? Within the court alone, 400. Among the common people, more than 1,000. Suam's eyes widened. "In a single month? How could something so trivial sell so much?" Hyang lowered his head slightly. "Perhaps it seems trivial only because it was invented by a child." Suam quickly bowed. "Forgive me, Crown Prince, for my rashness." Hyang's voice grew firm. "Then let it be clear for the well-being of the people. Our relationship with the merchants is of utmost importance." He called out, "Eunuch, bring me the book from my study, the one titled Geography of the World." Moments later, the emperor held the book in his hands. "This is one of the volumes I obtained through the envoys we sent to the Ming dynasty. It details their geography, their regional products, and their neighboring states. The Ming harvest far more crops than Rhone, and their reserves of food are abundant." Hyang continued, his tone heavy with urgency. "Meanwhile, many of our people suffer hunger. Droughts and spring famines leave them with meager harvests. That is why we must use the profits earned through our envoys to buy food and bring relief to the people." Suam once again raised his voice. "That is not the righteous path. A true king must share the hardships of his people, finding joy in simplicity and building virtue through humble living. When both ruler and people remain poor yet honest, the nation prospers in spirit." Hyang's eyes burned with defiance. "Are you suggesting we should take pride in poverty and call it virtue? Tell me, have you seen a commoner who truly wished to live in misery? The truth is, they are poor because they have no choice. In summer, they suffer from drought. In winter, they freeze. In spring, they starve to death. Under such suffering, who would praise the so-called virtue of their king?" His voice rang out across the chamber. "There is an old saying, even a nobleman will leap over a wall if his child goes hungry for 3 days. No parent can sit idly by while their children starve, and the king is the father of the people. Shouldn't a father act to save his children?" The emperor's face lit with pride. "My son speaks wisely." The court fell into silence. No one dared speak further. The scribes looked around in bewilderment before hurriedly recording every word. The emperor cleared his throat, and many of the officials who had opposed the crown prince lowered their heads in defeat. Seizing the moment, Hyang's voice rose with passion. "For the prosperity of Joseon, and for the salvation of our people, we must act." Moved by Hong's words, the emperor once again offered praise. My son speaks wisely, he said. The emperor paused, taking a moment to steady his composure, while Hyan carefully observed him. As the hall fell into silence, the emperor gestured. Please, continue. Hyan bowed slightly before speaking. Yes, father. The ministers and nobles beyond these palace walls can endure hunger because they understand both the reason for their suffering and the means to withstand it. But the common people lack such knowledge. They do not know how to bear hunger. If we wish to teach them, we must first lessen their burden. Do you not agree? The emperor struck his hand firmly against the table. Exactly, he declared, his voice resounding through the chamber. The court sat in stunned silence, their eyes fixed on him. Hyung thought to himself, Father is so agitated he's on the verge of losing control. Perhaps it's best to stop here for today. Nevertheless, he continued, throughout history, it has been said, the will of the people is the will of the heavens. Even if we strive to uphold our virtues, what will the gods think of us if the people cry out in misery? Moreover, the people often say, man proposes, God disposes. After we have done all we can, should we not then await the gods' judgment? Yet when droughts or plagues strike, the ministers claim the emperor has lost his virtue and demand that he preserve it above all else. Is that not contradictory? Turning to face the assembly, Hyung pressed further. Many of you have held office since before this dynasty was founded. Tell me, why did you not accuse King Tao of losing his virtue when he established this dynasty while still under the Goro kingdom? Or my grandfather, King Ti? Zhang was he without virtue for raising his sword against his own brothers? Or is my father unvirtuous for ascending the throne instead of his elder brother, the rightful heir? At this, Grand Minister Seum cried out in panic. Your Highness, the Crown Prince, that is not what we mean. Your Majesty, we have never harbored such vile or treacherous thoughts. We beg your Majesty for mercy. One by one, the officials echoed his plea, bowing low. Please, your Majesty, grant us mercy. The Emperor raised his hand. The Crown Prince's words were perhaps too harsh. I ask the ministers to forgive him. Next time, choose your words more carefully, Hyung. I will remember that, Father, Hyung replied earnestly. The Emperor then addressed the assembly. Listen well. I also believe that the well-being of the people is paramount. Furthermore, the tribute to the Ming Emperor shall proceed as the Crown Prince has proposed. The ministers lowered their heads in obedience. Do you have anything else to add, Crown Prince? The Emperor asked. Hyung responded without hesitation. Father, I believe it is more reasonable to pay the people with food for their labor, rather than handing it out freely. The Emperor raised his brows in surprise. Pay them, you say? Hyung explained, his tone measured and thoughtful. While a lack of rain is a leading cause of drought, the absence of irrigation systems and water reservoirs is equally destructive. We must prepare for the future by building reservoirs in every town and repairing those already in disrepair. We can mobilize the people to perform this work and, in return, compensate them with food. In this way, we can both provide for the hungry and strengthen the realm's defenses against famine. Is this not killing two birds with one stone? He turned to the ministers. What say you, esteemed ministers? They nodded in unison. We believe this is an excellent idea, Your Highness. The Emperor gave his command. Crown Prince returned to the palace. Hyung bowed respectfully. Yes, Father. The Emperor added, almost as an afterthought. And do not forget to prepare for your participation in state discussions once the ancestral rites are complete. Hyung lowered his head in gratitude. Thank you, Father, for granting this inexperienced son the honor of joining in state affairs. He then turned and departed, as the Emperor rose to his feet. This court is adjourned for today. You may all leave. Yes, Your Majesty, the ministers responded in unison. But before they could withdraw, the Emperor's voice deepened, carrying a heavy weight. And one more thing, he paused, scanning the faces before him. Perhaps I should also ask, what do you all truly think of this dynasty? The ministers froze, their bodies trembling with fear. Your Majesty, we have never harbored any disloyal thoughts, they pleaded, voices quivering. Please, show us mercy, Your Majesty. The Emperor's expression darkened. Return to your duties, he commanded coldly. Show mercy, Your Majesty, the ministers echoed as they bowed and departed the chamber. Once outside, whispers spread quickly among them. One wrong step, and there could be bloodshed. Not only does he carry the blood of King Tio, but also that of the former rulers. Grand Minister Seum abruptly interrupted. Enough. Watch your tongues. I'm only concerned about the future of this nation. Is this truly how it all ends? He let out a weary sigh. The others exchanged cautious glances, warning him to remain careful. Loose lips sink ships, you should know that by now. Seum sighed again. We've suffered a great loss today. We underestimated the crown prince simply because of his youth. One minister asked anxiously, then what should we do? Frowning, Seum replied, if no other option remains, we may have to submit a petition of resignation. The others were stunned. Resign? Yes, Seum continued firmly. It is our duty to advise. If the emperor strays from the path, we cannot remain silent. Even the ancient texts say that a wise ruler must listen to the people. I will ensure His Majesty remains a wise ruler. His words carried heavy, unspoken meaning. At that moment, a teacup was gently set down. I heard the crown prince caused quite a stir at the morning court session, remarked the queen consort. Exhausted, the emperor explained, the crown prince did nothing wrong. Quite the opposite, he spoke with clarity and accuracy. The commotion was my fault. I lost control and repeated words I once used when I was still a grand prince. It diminished the dignity of my kingship. The queen consort laughed so hard that tears welled in her eyes. How unfortunate I wasn't there to witness that side of your Majesty. Flustered, the emperor muttered, Stop it, lady of the central palace. I was already ashamed enough. She smiled knowingly. Yet your expression is brighter than before. You may not even realize it yourself. Speak freely. There is no need to fear the scribe's pens, is there? The emperor sipped his tea slowly. You're right. My first concern should be to put myself at ease. Wise words, Your Majesty, she praised. He went on. I also told the crown prince he would participate in state discussions after the ancestral rites. The queen consort hesitated. Is that truly wise? He is still so young. But recalling the morning session, the emperor mused, with how he conducted himself today and how he handled the matter of the golden nib pens, I believe it will be fine. The more I observe him, the more he resembles a man in his 40s. The queen consort laughed again. Not long ago, Your Majesty feared his intelligence would drive a wedge between you, but now you seem at peace. The emperor didn't hesitate. That's right, I am at ease now. Later, within the palace, the emperor dismissed the royal kitchen staff and all attendants. Alone at last, he let out a deep sigh of relief. Should I allow them to reveal themselves, or should I force them out? His thoughts churned. Should this end in peace, or will it come to bloodshed? He reflected grimly. Many of my father's officials still remain in this palace. What I need are loyal men, those who follow only my command. When King Si-young's decree was issued, the Ministry of Revenue began producing golden nib pens as tribute for Emperor Jongle, but a grave issue soon arose. What did you say? The emperor demanded. A court official knelt. Forgive me, Your Majesty, but the merchant guild in charge of manufacturing the pens has reported that they cannot meet the deadline. Jin Ho narrowed his eyes. As I suspected, given the current state of Joseon's workshops, producing them on time is impossible. He then said, Father, I would like to confirm something. May I summon the representative of that merchant guild? Seum immediately objected. This cannot be permitted. How could we summon a mere merchant to discuss the affairs of the state? The emperor responded calmly, his voice steady. Grand Secretary, you already knew how I would answer, and yet you dared interrupt me regardless. Is that why you spoke out? Realizing his mistake, Seum faltered. Why, Your Majesty, I... The emperor continued, his gaze firm. I understand your loyalty, but instead of rejecting every proposal blindly, why don't you suggest an alternative solution? Bowing his head deeply, Seum replied, I beg your majesty's forgiveness. The emperor gave his command. Summon the merchant immediately. A representative from the guild was soon brought in. Kneeling before the throne, he greeted respectfully, Your humble servant greets your majesty. The emperor explained, I have summoned you because the crown prince wishes to ask you something. Answer him honestly. Yes, your majesty, the merchant replied. Jin-ho spoke firmly. I have heard that your guild is unable to produce the golden nib pens on time. Why is this so? The merchant lowered his head. Golden nib pens are delicate works of craftsmanship. Each requires absolute focus and precision. Even if we attempt to work faster, there are natural limits to the process. Jin-ho asked again. So, the entire creation of each pen is done by a single craftsman? Yes, that is correct, the merchant confirmed. Each pen must be made from start to finish by the hands of one skilled artisan. The crown prince paused in thought, then turned to his father. Father, I believe I have a solution. But before I speak further, I must meet with the craftsmen of the guild. Once again, Seum protested harshly. Your Majesty, this cannot be allowed. First a lowly merchant, and now the prince wishes to summon mere craftsmen into this hallowed hall. Please reconsider. The emperor's patience finally snapped. Grand Secretary, enough. Why should I not summon them when the matter at hand directly concerns the affairs of the nation? Still displeased, Seum tried to object. Your Majesty, But the emperor cut him off sharply. If you continue to argue, I will begin to question your loyalty. The room fell into a heavy silence. No one dared to speak further. The emperor commanded, Bring the craftsmen here. When the group of artisans arrived, they knelt before the throne. Jin-ho addressed them directly. I have been told that each of you is responsible for every step in creating the golden nib pens. Is that true? Yes, Your Highness, they answered in unison. Jin-ho continued, I have a proposal. Instead of requiring one craftsman to complete every step, why not divide the tasks? One person could shape the nib, another could form it, and a third could handle the engraving. What are your thoughts? The craftsman exchanged uncertain glances, then spoke carefully. It may be possible, Your Highness. At first, we would need time to adjust, but once we grow accustomed to the method, the process should indeed become faster than what we are doing now. Jin-ho nodded with satisfaction. This system is called the division of labor. When many people share responsibilities, they can produce greater quantities far more quickly. The emperor's eyes lit with approval. That makes perfect sense. We shall await good news from you. You may leave. After the hall emptied, the emperor turned to his son. Division of labor to increase productivity, such a clever idea. Tell me, Crown Prince, how did you come upon this solution? Jin-ho smiled and explained. When I once visited the kitchens, I noticed the assistants and maids working under the head chef. Each had a specific task. One chopped vegetables, another prepared sauces, and another tended the fire. From that, I understood how much faster work can be done when divided among many hands. That memory inspired this idea. The emperor laughed heartily. To think this child would conceive such wisdom from something so ordinary. Truly, the crown prince is extraordinary. What say you, my ministers? The officials all bowed in agreement. We concur, Your Majesty. The crown prince is indeed wise. Yet Suum could not restrain himself. Your Majesty, I believe the Crown Prince is focusing too much on trivial matters. Should he not devote his sharp mind to studying the teachings of the sages instead? The Emperor frowned. Why do you call it trivial to observe what others overlook and draw meaning from it? Did not the wise men of the past also ponder matters that benefited the nation and its people, then share their insights? Why must you be so narrow-minded? Flustered, Suum lowered his head quickly. I only wish the very best for the Crown Prince, Your Majesty. The Emperor's expression darkened, his voice rising in anger. Is this what the Crown Prince spoke of the other day? Do you truly believe that I and my ancestors are unworthy of ruling? Is that why you dare utter such absurd words? Suum immediately panicked, bowing low as he quickly explained. I would never dare harbor such disloyal thoughts. Your Majesty, please understand my intentions. Another minister, silently watching, thought to himself, indeed, Suum's words were somewhat narrow-minded, but is it truly worth the Emperor's wrath? It's common for officials to boast about a talented child. Yet, to use authority to crush those who merely disagree that is unbecoming of a ruler. Meanwhile, Jinho reflected quietly. Father is showing his true nature again. Later, Jinho returned to the East Palace. Closing the door behind him, he let out a long sigh. That was tense. I wonder what would have happened if I hadn't brought up the example of labor division in time. He paused, deep in thought. Still, lately, Father keeps summoning me. At first, I only wanted a little of his attention, but it seems I've created trouble for myself. I didn't even realize that the idea of labor division doesn't formally exist in this period. Even before Adam Smith, labor division appeared naturally over time. But turning it into an industrial principle that was something forged through an agreement between absolutist monarchies and the regulations of the market. His mind drifted to Rhone. Though officially an absolute monarchy, in truth, Rhone is a battlefield of ideals. The king clings to absolute rule, while officials lean toward a republican order. The people, on the other hand, yearn for a semi-republican government, one where the king protects their interests above those of the officials. He straightened, determination forming in his voice. True change cannot be achieved overnight. If I am to strengthen the power of the throne, I must build gradually. Father would wish for this as well. Authority must extend to every corner of the kingdom, and to accomplish that, we need wealth. That settles it. I will fill the treasury first.